Sales Proformance Show.
Welcome back to the Sales Proformance Podcast Show, everybody. I'm your host, Dave Sliman, and I have a great guest today, Bennett Maxwell. Now, this guy and I got on a call last week, and I got to tell you, we hit it off right away. He's got very limited energy, as you're going to be able to see here, okay? But the bottom line is that once we started talking about this, we went through very similar paths. Now, this guy's younger than I am, okay? So he's tearing it up at this point. But ultimately, he's built, his experience in the beginning in sales and business development, and now has started a franchise about 3 years ago that has had massive, massive growth. For those of you out there listening to this show, and you have a dream and you have an idea and you want to build an organization, build a company, build an empire, or build wealth for yourself, either personally or professionally, you're going to want to listen to this show. This guy's disciplined. He knows what he wants to do, and he's got a great story. So Bennett Maxwell, welcome to the show. Appreciate you having here.
What a freaking intro, David. Thank you.
Dude, I did my research. We talked. I mean, we hit it right on the head. And for anybody listening to the show, sit back, relax, and enjoy this one, because we're going to go into a great story. So we're going to get into your business and where you are today, okay? But I want to talk about your background. And you've done a lot in the sales and professional development realm, business development. But take us back a little bit amongst your history and how you've gotten where you are today.
Yeah, how far back did we start?
I
started a little far back and then go quick.
Go wherever you want to go. Yeah, we'll keep it moving. Believe me, I'll keep it moving, but we got to hear some of this stuff.
So it definitely has been sales, like just as long as I can remember. The first thing I remember was buying candy bars at Costco, eating a lot of them, and trying to sell the rest with my brothers at an elementary school. And then we were told you couldn't do that. So we just put a blanket right outside of the school. And then we also got kicked off of that corner. Shaved ice stands on the corner, lemonade stands. We did that in elementary. Started selling lawn aeration and snow shovels door to door in junior high. In high school, it was, to play sports, go sell stuff. Or as far as like cookie dough was actually the thing I sold for wrestling. If you want to, either you pay us a few $100 or go sell, a few $100 worth of cookie dough. So it was always like, you can go sell anything if you just go try hard enough. That led to Cutco, which I think was very valuable as far as sales skills and referral based, which translated to, now that I've been raising capital for the last few years, we've raised just under 10 million. And it's mostly referral based. And I attribute a lot of that to Cutco and what happened next, which was a Mormon mission, which same thing, referrals, 2 years worth of sales and communication skills, which led me to door to door, which led me to solar. And then I started a solar company. About a year into it, I bought Dirty Dough. 6 months later, I sold the solar company and dove in full time to Dirty Dough. And then we franchised it after about a year of owning it. That was, and now it's just opening up stores and trying to keep your head above water and just breathe every 5 minutes. Just as long as I get one breath every 5 minutes, I can keep going.
So he went through the whole iteration right there of where he is today, but we're going to go back here. Okay. Let's talk about the mission, right? A little bit about like, where'd you go and what'd you do and what kind of experience and everything you learned from there.
So Utah's very religious, especially Utah County where I grew up and where I live right now. So it's like when you're 18, 19 years old, you go on a 2-year mission. You don't choose where you go. So I got sent to Tijuana, Mexico. I didn't speak Spanish. You arrive with a companion that's a native Spanish speaker that doesn't speak any English. You don't speak any Spanish. And you're just like, all right, we'll figure this out. Right when I got to Tijuana, within the first month or two, it was knocking doors and proselyting is what they call it.
Yeah.
But there were some kidnappings or something in some other parts of Mexico. Some other missionaries had some issues. So for the rest of my mission, it was no more proselyting. So how do you contact people? Well, you visit people that are already members and you ask them for referrals. And I was really good at that, again, because of Cutco. Rather than like, oh, do you have any referrals for me? Think about it. It's like, who do you know? And then they tell you something. Where do they live? Okay, let's go. It's like, no, we're going right now. And I learned that from Cutco. It's like, Who do you know? Write them down. And then they write them down and you're like, okay, start calling it. And they're like, right now? You're like, yeah, just get them on the phone and hand it over to me. I'll set the appointment. And they're like, okay. So you learn those skills. But hard work, learning
Yeah.
languages and communications. Then I came back and I read all these sales manuals for a pest control company because I sold pest and I
Yeah.
sold satellite and I sold security systems. And they're all the same. That was the same thing that I learned for 2 years, like the order of the sales process and the follow up and all of that. So very grateful for that experience. I mean, on many regards, but especially for the communication skills that I learned.
So great, man. In going to that, right? So after your mission, you start working for a pest control company, right? You're doing
Yeah.
your thing and you're having success there. You're doing really well there. Where do you get to the point where you're like, all right, the fundamentals? Well, let's back up on the fundamentals. What do you think are some of the most important fundamentals of the sales process?
Um, Asking the right questions and going till the end of the concern. It's when you knock doors, you get all sorts of concerns right off the bat. Just like when you walk into a retail store and somebody asks you, "Can I help you?" You know what you're looking for. You could use the help, and you say, "No, just looking." You know, that's the smoke screens. So really getting past the smoke screens. I think I've sold multiple millions of dollars in any industry that I've been in the first year, and I think it's the most important questions are right at the beginning of the sales process. Why are you meeting with me? Why did you accept this meeting? Oh, because you cold knocked on my door. Yeah, but why'd you take the time out of your day? And then they give you a few reasons. And then you say, but why else? Why else? And then they don't name all the biggest reasons to buy. And then you put them in their mind. Well, a lot of other people meet with me for franchises or for solar because they're interested in saving at least 30% off their bill. Right. And then you start, but what I can do in that question, if I do it right, is I know everything that they want. I know all of the trigger points that are going to cause them to buy. And I know it within the first 5 minutes. Then I say, well, why haven't you gone solar? Why haven't you bought a Dirty Dough franchise? Why haven't you ever hired a pest control company? And then why? And other people don't go solar because they are planning on moving in a few years. Is that a concern to you? Right. I'm going to put all the concerns in their head and see if they're actually concerned. So I know what to focus the rest of my 30-minute presentation on. And if you do that right, whether any industry, you're going to know if you have the sell in the first 5-10 minutes. And if you don't finish the presentation because it's
Yeah.
just a waste of time. If I know everything they want and everything they don't want, and I can't give them everything they want and take out everything that they don't want within reason, then it's easy. It's like, sorry, this isn't a fit for you. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. But typically it is. And you can have super high closing ratios because your presentation is tailored to what they want and what they don't want. I
Listen,
think that's the most
we
fundamental.
got we got to clip that back because any I don't care if you're a sales professional, a business owner, whatever it is, if you're navigating your kids, you got to ask the why and listen to that what he said just earlier and clip that back about the why. Like, why haven't you done that? Why haven't you done this? Like, and I think one of the biggest things that I was just training with a team last week of about 15 sales professionals. And I always, you and I are so aligned because one of the very first questions I ask outside of setting the agenda for the meeting is, you know, what were you hoping to get out of this meeting today? And it's very simple, similar to what you said. Why'd you take this meeting today? It's the same question, but so many times professionals want to just vomit about what they got and how they can help, but they never really try to understand what was the reasoning behind why. Because they took the meeting for a reason,
Yeah.
right? I
And,
mean, they
and
took it for a reason.
you get to the end of the presentation and they're like, they give you some objection. You're like, oh, I could answer that though. But once they've already told you no because of an objection, it's way harder to resolve that and come back. But if I brought up the objection and I resolved it and you never said no to me, then you get to the end of the sales presentation and you're training some guy in his area and you just knocked on a door. You set the appointment, you come back in 2 hours, you present to him for 45 minutes and you make 10 grand. And the guy's like, oh my gosh, I wish you weren't with me because I would have knocked that door and I would have sold that. I would have made the 10 grand. They
Oh,
were
that-
a lay down sell. They just laid over and said, what's the next steps? And I said, yes, but that's because I present correctly. Like if you have a good sales presentation, you shouldn't have objections at the end. You should never get objections because I don't present until I know the objections first. So I'm always tackling those. Otherwise, you get to the end of the sales presentation and you're excited because somebody's considering giving you a few $1 million in investment. And they're like, oh, we don't we don't invest unless you have this amount of revenue or this amount in EBIT or this. And then it's just like, I just wasted all of that freaking time.
It
Dang
did.
it. You need to know what they want and what they
Yeah,
don't want. So you're the one telling them, oh, I fit your criteria or I don't fit the criteria. So if there's a no, you're the one saying it's a no. It shouldn't be the customer.
absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. You've got to have a sound sales framework when you're presenting to build value. But the big part of it is in the beginning, asking the right questions, because typically, if you ask the right questions in the beginning, that's going to navigate you where to put more pressure in your sales presentation, because you'll have some fundamental, pillars that you'll have in your presentation, but you'll understand where to put more pressure to add more value in what you have. So man, we probably could do a whole show, just you and I together. We may do that,
With
just on
questions.
sales presentation and questions
Yep.
and sales presentation framework. Like, I could probably sit in here for an hour and talk hours and talk to you about this one. We could do a live album on that one, but that's great. So, but I do want to move on because there's a lot we want to talk about here. And so now you've had some success working for an organization, and where do you feel you had that switch? Was there a defining moment where you're like, you know what, I'm just going to do my own thing? You know what, screw it. I'm kicking ass. I'm going to do my own thing here.
Yeah. So when you start as a straight commission, I mean, all of those jobs I listed, in the door-to-door world, it's 100% commission. Even if you're a manager, it's still 100% commission. What a
Yes.
manager means is you go recruit your own guys, you go get your own leads, you train them yourself, and if they move out of state and they're crazy enough to do that, and if they make a sell, then you make a small override. You only make money is if you continue to train them, keep them motivated. So you're running your own little business already, right? You're an entrepreneur, you're a 1099 contractor, you eat what you kill. If you don't have revenue, you make no money. So
Right.
I was already in that mindset for a handful of years. Then when I started doing solar, it was like, yeah, what is this sales organization that I'm selling for doing for me? Like, they're not, I need to be trained on solar. I don't need to be trained so much on sales. I just need to know those basics. And after maybe 3 months, my brother called me up and he's like, hey, why aren't you doing this online? And I'm like, because I don't know how. I'm an idiot. I'm just a door knocking guy. And he's like, let's test it out. He moved out to Sacramento. That's where I was at for a few
Yeah.
months. And we paid somebody to get us some leads on Facebook, hired some people out of the Philippines to call those leads, set the appointment, get the utility bill, get the proposal. Then I would just drive to a confirmed appointment. And we tested 18 appointments. All of them showed up, which is pretty rare. But again, I'm not driving out unless they confirm the same day.
It's
Of those
fantastic.
18, 16 of them signed with me on the first visit. One of them signed on the second visit, and I never got the third one. And that was enough evidence. And we're like, okay, this is silly. Pay a few $100 for a lead, pay $5 an hour for somebody to set it, and then a $10,000 commission minus your cost. Like, yeah, that's profitable. Let's
Heck
let, let's
yeah.
create that.
That's fantastic, man. So then you start your own deal there, and that becomes widely, obviously, successful. And are you building the organization at this time? Like, you're talk to me about the process and building the organization.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty quick. Within a year of our first recruit, I'd purchased Dirty Dough. And the reason why I was able to do that is because we started with the E Myth Revisited activity. The E Myth is the entrepreneur myth.
Book.
Don't own your own. I mean, you need to own a business, not a job. So how do you get out of that? Because most business owners just own a job, and that's defined as if I don't show up, I don't get paid. And not only do I own my own job, it's not a great job because I get paid last. I have to pay everybody and everything first, and I have to work the most hours to do it. So how do you get out of that mindset? Well, envision what your organization is going to look like in 1, 2, 5 years, whatever time period.
Great.
Build the organization chart, and then you start with the most entry level position. For me, it was a sales rep. And it's, well, what does a sales rep do? How much do they get paid? What hours do they work? What areas? How long are they? The expectations, incentives, all of that. You build it out, write it down, and then you promote yourself to sales manager. You hire your first salesperson. You do the same thing with the manager. What overrides do they make? What hours do they do? How do they incentivize their sales reps? How do they recruit? What's the structure? Build it out, then go up to sales regional, hire a sales manager. So within a year, we had all of the operations, all of the sales, bookkeeping, everything taken care of, and we'd replace ourselves. So I purchased Dirty Dough. About 6 months after that, the opportunity came to sell. I
Okay.
didn't think you could sell a sales organization. It's mainly contractors.
Yeah.
Somebody offered to buy us. I think, and got really lucky there, got a good exit, and then got to also focus all my time, energy, and effort on Dirty Dough, which there's no way that, you could really grow a business if you're trying to do too many things at once.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk about the dirty dough experience, right? And transitioning into that. I want to unpack how that all happened and what got you to that point because we're going to talk more about this company here as we go.
Okay. Um, I bought the company without ever being in food or franchising or working in a restaurant. I didn't live in the same state and I'd never made cookies.
Which is crazy because I have been in the franchise space. I built a franchise organization and I was actually, well, again, I was a franchisee and I thought, well, how hard can it be to run a franchise or create a franchise? Whoa, hold on a second here. But the growth you've had. So let's talk. Yes. All right. So you transition. So you're like, sorry to cut in, but go ahead and keep
No, no,
going there.
you're totally good. So I buy this company with the intention of franchising it. Before I franchise it, I wanted to test it out. You know,
Yeah.
can it survive in two markets? So we opened up in San Diego, just a ghost kitchen. So it's like a few grand, and you're just renting ovens and stuff from a kitchen
Mhm.
that's already established, and that did really well. Okay, now let's franchise it. What's the model? You look at the Crumble Chip or the companies that were already around doing in this gourmet
Yeah.
cookie space. They have great top line sales, but I look at their model and it's like, wait, 50 employees before you can open up? There's no way I'm going to hire. Like, I don't want to run a store that I have to have 50 employees before Crumble lets me open up the doors.
Is
And that's
that
been the
is
case
that
up
what it
until
is?
um it before it was 60. I think they lowered it to 50. Don't quote me on that, but you can go
Okay. All right.
verify
Yeah.
it. But it's
But it's a
yes,
lot.
50, 60, something like that. Why? Well, because the easier way to franchise is, David, here's my recipe. Go buy
Mhm.
mixers, go buy all of your own raw ingredients, go hire teenagers and college kids, mix 60 cookies at a time. Once it's done being mixed, have somebody come in for 5 hours and all they're going to do is bend over slightly and weigh the dough. They're going to quit after 2 weeks because their back's going to kill them. And then you portion it by hand. Okay. Or you look at Mrs. Fields and Great American Cookie Company. They've both been around for almost 50 years with multiple hundred locations, and Insomnia, over 20 years, multiple hundred locations.
Okay.
How do they survive all of the recessions that we've hit in the last 50 years?
Yeah.
One employee, 500 square feet, low overhead. How do you do that? Well, you have to have a centralized production. So now you get economies of scale on flour, sugar, butter. You mix thousands of cookies at a time, which gives you greater quality control. You machine portion it rather than hand portion it, which gives you greater consistency. And then you can make more unique products. We can make three-layer cookies, which nobody else in the world is making, which is like a peanut butter dough on the outside, chocolate dough in the middle with a hot fudge injection. And then you ship that cookie out to the franchise. And then the franchisee, or you, David, can walk into any Dirty Dough across 25 states today, grab any cookie you want out of the freezer. It doesn't matter because every cookie cooks for the same time, temperature, and fan speed. Every oven is already programmed. So you just put it in the oven, press start. So it was really building the simple model without creating it per se, because it already existed. I was just marrying two models, front
Yes.
facing where consumer facing, where a large gourmet cookie company with rotational flavors. Back end where Mrs. Fields' Great American Cookie Insomnia's robust, proven business model.
It's so great, man. You are so aligned because I started a marketing and advertising franchise, and I did this hybrid magazine where it had the elements of a discount or coupons in it, so to speak, but yet it had the feel of kind of like an upscale or a higher end magazine. So I just took the two and I just combined them, and I got value. The whole goal was to get businesses that did like to advertise that way through direct mail and digital and print, but I also, the goal for me was to get businesses who did not like to advertise that way because they didn't feel held enough value, and I really caught it right in the middle. So it's very similar conceptually,
Yeah, it's
of
like,
what you
oh,
put
it's
together.
genius. You came up with a new. It's like, yes, it
No.
is genius, I guess, but it's just looking at what exists already out there. It's like, this works, this works. Will it work together? Let's see, but you don't
So
have to go reinvent anything crazy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that's what we've done with Dirty Done. Because of that, yeah, our first franchise opened about 2 years ago, summer of
Yeah.
2022. We've sold 450 plus franchises, 80 something of those are open. And then every week it seems like we're opening a store or two. So it's been quick, it's been ugly, it's been messy, it's been fun. Yeah, the whole franchise. 3 years ago, I couldn't tell you the difference between a franchisee and a franchisor. I didn't never even heard the term. I didn't know what an FDD was, which is a franchise disclosure document.
We're gonna slow down here a second, okay? Because we got to unpack this a little bit. But the growth he is talking about in 3 years is phenomenal growth in that space. There have been brands that have been around who have 15 or 20 that have been around for 10 or 15 years. Okay. So the growth that you have really put together here, Bennett, is fantastic. Okay. So talk to me a little bit. You start franchising, you're putting your FTD together, you're like, I'm getting into this deal. How do you start putting the word out about your organization, and what attributed to that growth so quickly?
Yeah, as I was building the franchise concept, so one, I think I had the advantage of buying a business. I'm not emotionally attached to anything. I don't care if I don't like the chocolate chip cookie, as long as the majority of the people like it, you know? So there isn't, everything's up for scrutiny and everything's up for change if that's what the numbers indicate. Um, and because of that, you're kind of building off a blank slate, even though you have an existing company. And then I
Right.
got the advice of, I'm like, oh, I'm going to hold my cards to my chest. I don't want other people to do a centralized production in this space and this and that. Um, got an advisor and he's just like, no, 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 no. Nobody's not, people aren't sitting around waiting to steal your idea because they don't have ideas. They don't steal your idea because it's just an idea. It takes a lot of work. Go tell any and
Yes.
everybody what you're doing. So I did. I went and pre pitched, hey, David, I'm creating a franchise. I know that you have some history in franchising. Do you mind if I just tell you what I'm doing and you give me your feedback? And then what am I doing? Why um what makes you interested in a franchise? What would be the buying points for you, David? Why haven't you bought a franchise? It's the same questions,
That
even though I'm
same
not selling
question.
anything right now, but it's the same
Right. Right.
questions. I know everything you want and everything you don't want. Now I can go build that, So what do people not want? They don't want 50 employees. They don't want to have to be an expert baker. They don't want a super high build out cost with all the mixers. And as I did that, I did change the model several times. Like it was going to be, I saw 5 franchises at a time. You have to buy 5 franchises and you do your own centralized production. I spoke with the owner of a concept called Everbowl and he said, that is a failing idea.
Okay.
Like just flat out. They have like maybe 100 stores open. It's an acai chain. So by the time I franchised, I'd already gotten feedback from probably 100 people and I knew what they wanted and knew what they didn't want. And then I asked them all for referrals. If they weren't interested, who do you know that would be interested in something? If I could create this, who do you know? And then you go create it and you come back to them and say, hey, are you or somebody you know interested? And I always phrase it like that, you or someone you know. Because when
Yeah.
people tell you no, if you give, they feel bad. So if you give them an out, no, but I do know somebody. And most people are willing to give you referrals. So right when we franchised, we had quite a bit of hype. And then we did pricing. Rather than $30,000 for a franchise fee, the first 5 people to sign up for a franchise get it for 10,000. So you build some momentum. Now I have 5 franchises sold within a week, but not just 5 franchises. They're each buying a few franchises. They just get the discount on the first one. So now I've
Right.
sold 30 within the first month or so, and that builds momentum. And then it led up to a lawsuit, which was a very public lawsuit. We had about 60 franchises sold at the time in the first six
Yeah.
months, which great pace. We ended the year with 290 sold. Because of the exposure that the lawsuit gave us. I should say the exposure that my reaction to the lawsuit gave us in making fun of it and throwing up billboards and commercials and things like that.
Wait a second. Can you talk about it? Can you
Yeah,
dig
yeah,
into it a little bit? Yeah, you said it's
yeah. It was
public, so
very public. It's all
yeah, let's
over
talk
now.
about that because you're talking about making probably when people hear lawsuit, they go, okay. And I'm not saying that wasn't stressful for you, but I want to talk about how you handled that and really what went down.
Yeah. So we get sued before we open up our first franchise. So we have one
Okay.
corporate location and that's it. And Crumble had just put up a billboard that said million cookies sold every day. We'll do the math. That's $1 billion company. And you're like, oh shit, why are these guys suing us? And then you read the lawsuit and it's just bullshit. Like, I'm like, okay, I know exactly what they're doing. They're suing us so we can't go get loans because I could sue you today, David, and you can't go get an SBA loan tomorrow. And I could sue you for whatever reason because because anything. Like you said something that offended me and I'm emotional distress. And
Right.
then it's bullshit. But you have to spend money and months or years to prove it because I could just
What?
drag it
Yeah.
out. Right. So I'm like, okay, that's the strategy, whatever. We have to play the game. 6 weeks goes by and a news article picks it up. So now it's public. Once it was public, I'm like, okay, well, let me at least give me my side of the story. So I broke down every single point in the lawsuit through a separate post. I think it was like a 13 series post of why every point was bullshit and how you could go verify it. It's not a he said, she said battle. Go look at this Instagram post, this Instagram post. We did the sprinkle cookie first, and yet they put it on a lawsuit saying that we copied them, but you could go verify it. So I was very public and transparent, and we
Right.
kind of started some billboard wars. We put Dirty Dough coming soon. This was in May. No, this was in April. May, Crumble puts $100,000 worth of billboards across 40 miles of Utah. We were spending 2 grand a month on digital rotating billboards. They flood the freeway. Then the lawsuit goes public. Then,
Okay.
so we do some billboards. One of them was our cookies don't crumble with competition. Cookies so good we're being sued with like a cookie with a blurred out image with the word censored. And this is in the middle of Happy Valley, Mormon, Utah County, and it looks like
Right,
a
right.
pornographic picture of a cookie. You know what I mean? So we had fun with it. How many people saw those? Not that many, right? They're digital
Right.
rotating billboards and, you know, maybe 100,000, a few 100,000. But I got the screenshot of the 5 billboards and I tagged Crumble in a post and I said, "Hey, Crumble, love your new billboards. What do you think about mine?" Well, a lot of news channels picked that up, and that post alone on my social media got over 1 million views, and
Oh,
then I don't know,
gosh.
maybe 30 local news channels in addition to CNBC and Good Morning America. And then we also did professional commercials. We hired the same guy who created the Squatty Potty video. If you ever saw that with a unicorn pooping that rainbow, we hired
Yes.
the same talent to create our videos, and they made fun of the entire lawsuit, but actually hitting on the points of the lawsuit. It wasn't just like
Right.
let's make fun of them because they're, just to be funny. It's like, no, let's make fun of the points in the lawsuit to drive awareness to this, what I would view as an unethical business practice, but completely legal. You could sue anybody for any reason and it doesn't matter.
That's
So
brilliant.
and then it's how do you stomach every time you pay an attorney bill? And we'll shift the mindset. You pay a few $100,000 in attorney fees, but we made how many million in franchise fees due to the exposure. So I reframed it and I said, this is my franchise development bucket, and it includes billboards, legal fees, and commercials. And that was the best ROI that I'd probably gotten in my life.
Oh, man. And it's all how you frame it, man. It's all how you frame it for yourself. I think, again, with we hearing the word lawsuit, everyone gets, but you looked at it and you unpacked it and you put it out there in a way that most people conventionally would not have done it. And I give you a lot of credit for doing that. I really have, because
Thank you.
I've been in that bullshit too. People, it's stressful. It's stressful, but you unpacked it. What do you think? Listen, man, you're a high performer. I know that. Okay, so we're going to talk on the personal level and professional level. But what do you think are the key ingredients? No pun intended on the cookie thing there. But what are the key ingredients for someone to be a successful who's right now maybe in the very strong sales professional or business professional, and they want to up their game? What are some of the key ingredients for somebody who's a high performer versus and draws results versus somebody who does not?
As far as the skill set goes,
Yeah.
if you're in business, there's not, I mean, if you're a human, you've never interacted with somebody else that wasn't a sell, right? Like I'm selling you right now on the idea that every conversation is you're selling somebody on your idea or they're selling you on theirs, but that is every single interaction. So rather than say and wear the badge of honor, like some people do, I'm not a salesperson. Come to my event. We're not going to sell you anything. It's like, well, that's not a business. So be proud of like, no, embrace sales. And if you need to, get rid of the stupid fucking sales term and call it communication, and then dedicate yourself to be the most professional and well-educated communicator there is. And then when you go hire CEOs, you can sell them on why they should work for you. That's how we got the Jimmy John CEO, right? When you go raise capital, you sell them on that. When you bring people in from franchises, you like everything is a sell. So skill based, I think that outside of having the skill, I mean, organization, I think is really important as far as maybe I want to change that. I'm going to stick with the education.
I was
Educate
gonna
yourself. You just need to know everything, and anything you don't know, go recruit somebody as an advisor or an employee that does know it. And then, you have to want it and have to have the drive, I think, to
yeah.
have it. Which I'm not. Anyways, I'll I'll stop right there. I'm still trying to figure out how much of the drive is good and how much is negative, because there's obviously it's good in terms of financial success,
Yeah.
but I quickly watched that drive allow me to get up to 310 pounds when I was 5'8" when I was running my solar company. Like the drive can be detrimental as well. So always have that
Let's
balance.
let's go back there. You were 310 pounds.
Yeah, 2 years ago, I was 310 pounds. I'm at like 195 right now.
That what clicked at that point?
I, it was, I sold my solar company
Yeah.
and that was 3 years ago. And that I'm like, I felt great because I had this goal. Like, I'm gonna just everything else I'm gonna put on hold until I can solve all my life problems. And all your life problems are solved when you're a millionaire. Right?
Right.
Right? That's what
Right.
I learned. So it was
Right.
like, I just need to be a millionaire before 30, and then I don't have problems. And then I'll go fix all the problems that I'm creating in my relationships and my weight and all that other shit.
Right.
Well, I achieved it and I felt amazing. But the unique thing about the brain is you have your dopamine and it resets so quickly, because whether you're smelling a flower or tasting a piece of pizza or doing an activity, it's always there's only a few chemicals in your brain. So if they are in your brain and they last, that's not going to work. They have to reset back down to a zero baseline. So now you can get more dopamine from the next thing. Well, unfortunately, that applies when you're a millionaire. It only lasts the same amount of dopamine as, when you're smelling a freaking flower, maybe a little bit longer. So then
Amen,
it's like,
brother.
okay, I recognize that pattern, that I immediately felt amazing. And then I felt normal again a short time later. And then I set the next goal of $2 million. And then I'm going to sacrifice everything I am and have until I get that. Luckily, I caught myself in that cycle and the first thing I did was went and sought professional help. Why don't my values that I tell myself, my family and fitness that are supposed to be up here and important, but if I look at my calendar for the last 3 years, I don't spend much time on either. I spend all my time on work. So, Mr. Therapist, how do I do this? And I've been seeing a therapist for 3 years now. So it was making the decision of like dialing what I wanted, and it wasn't anything material. It was
Yeah.
an emotion that I'm after, and a material goal can and potentially will help me get that. But it's very clear to me that I'm not after anything material, and I would argue that nobody's after anything material. Everybody's after an emotional state, and they just hope that that material goal will help them get there. Well, why don't we just drop the material goal and set the emotional goal? You know what I mean? Like, why don't you just narrow in on how you want to feel and then go for that? And then all the other bullshit of like, oh, I just need to work harder and grind. And because grinding is so cool and hustling is so cool, drop all that shit.
Yeah, man. You have hit this so on the head because when you make your millions, or whether it's 2 million or 1 million, whatever the $1 million mark or whatever your mark is, first off, when I had my last acquisition, it was a good one. Um, but it wasn't as great like as I thought it was, right? Like you have this moment where it's great, and then you're like think you're going to be like this changed person because you have, nominally you're much better, and then you're like, no, it's not. It's like not as good as you would think of it. You've worked your ass off all these years to get to this point and grinded it, and you get to that point, and then you're like, damn, it's really like it hasn't the clouds did not like disperse, and this maybe for a few minutes, you get pumped and you're
Yeah.
excited about it, but then it's like, man, what's next, right? Like it was that thing for me. It was like,
It's because
oh shit,
nothing changed, right? I mean,
yeah,
you have more money, But what determines your satisfaction in life is your mood, which is determined by your thoughts. And having $1 million in the bank doesn't address any negative thinking patterns that you've had. It doesn't address any of that, So it's like you're still the exact same
Same.
person, but yet we
Totally.
thought that $1 million
Totally.
dollars is gonna like all of a sudden
Totally.
release dopamine indefinitely for in our body. And it's just like that's just not how it works. So when I narrowed that down, and I think it was more like beginning of this summer, I had to like reset it again. I'm like, okay, I'm working 40 hours a week, and that's what I've been doing for the last few years. I've worked less than I ever have in my life, and I've had more success. And then at the beginning of the summer, I'm like, I'm going to even tone it down a little bit more because I'm so stressed. And I always tell myself, if I just once I franchise, I'm not going to be stressed because it's going to be better. Once I open my first franchise, I'm not going to be stressed because it's going to be better. Once I open my 10th, once I open my 50th, once I sell 100, once I sell 400, and it's like you just keep hitting those, and you're like, okay, well, that's not working. So I'm not going to tell myself when my business is fixed, I'm going to be happy. I'm just going to fix my mind and figure out why my mind is uncomfortable with uncertainty and teach my mind how to be comfortable with certainty. And then I don't need to always be fixing my business in order to achieve that emotional state.
Gosh, clip that deal right there. Again, there's been so many here that we could clip, but that one, we got to clip that one back. And because again, I always say this on the show, it's a professional and personal development show. It's Proformance. I mean, you when we have successful CEOs or business owners or whatever in the profession that are on this show, there's always a personal development side to this too. One has to go with the other. And I got to tell you, man, I live in Park City. We're neighbors. Actually, we're going to get together
Yes.
after this show at some point over the next couple of weeks. But some of the best moments for me are I get up early and I work out, and then I'm driving home from the gym and I'm coming across Lake Jordanelle, getting off the exit, and the trees. Like right now, the fall is unbelievable because you know how the trees change and everything in the mountains, but like that's the moment where I'm like at the most high. And it has nothing to do with money, has nothing to do with business or a client or a situation, but ultimately just in taking in what the world has to offer for you and just sitting out there. And I think it's a huge thing to recognize. So really cool, man.
Absolutely. And the cool thing is it's already out there. I think a lot of people will be able to relate to this. Why I wanted $1 million. Because $1 million equals time freedom, right? And what does time freedom equal? Well, that equals I get to go on vacation more. And who do I go on vacation with? My three amazing kids and my beautiful wife. And what happens when I'm with my three kids and my amazing wife? I'm happy. So
Yeah.
if I could just have $1 million, I could be happy with my family. Or I can be happy every day and take my kids on a daddy daughter date or daddy son date. My 3-year-old still calls them daddy daughter dates because he doesn't understand it. Or I can do that with them every day, not work past 4 and not work weekends and go on a lot of trips now. And then I'm like, oh, that was kind of a light bulb that went off. Like, what would you do if you have $10 million? I would go to the gym in the morning. I would come home and I'd just be able to appreciate the beauty of the trees. Guess what? We could do that today. We just have to get our
Right.
mind right
Right
and
there.
get our mind focused on that rather than, oh, if I just fix my business, then maybe one day I'll be able to enjoy the trees.
It's so good, man. It's so good. You're great, dude. This has been
Thanks, David.
fantastic. We got to get together. We're close in proximity, and we need to plan that after the show. We need to set
I'm
that
gonna
time to
throw
get
a
together.
reminder on my phone. I'm
Yeah.
trying to I told you right before this, we're trying to close up an acquisition that's supposed to
Yeah,
happen
yeah,
next
do
week.
your thing. Yeah, over the next couple
Um,
weeks. He's got like
I'll
like an
shoot you I'm gonna shoot you a text because I for sure I'll drive up to Park City.
he's got
Your
yeah.
city's more beautiful than mine. Mine's pretty beautiful, but I'll
Yeah.
drive up to you and we'll
Cool,
hang
man.
out up there.
Hang out. We'll hang out for sure. We'll shoot the shit for an afternoon and do that. Listen, last question before we go here, okay? So what's next for you? Obviously we've talked a little bit about some certain stuff, but realistically, you keep accomplishing, you keep growing. What's on the horizon?
Like the immediate, I'm selling franchises for Craveworthy and they're acquiring us. Outside of a year, I have no idea, and I also don't care.
Yeah.
I'm I'm so much gravitating towards, like, the mind thinks too much and it's always worried about things that typically don't happen. So can I just use my mind as a tool when it's needed and be present the other times? So I am more interested in the personal journey right now than the business journey. And that's where I'm spending more and more of my time exploring weird ass books and consciousness and psychedelics and just being a weirdo.
Cool, man. Cool. What are you reading right now? Anything good?
The I read a book that I just finished, The Power of Now, and anyways, if you've ever heard of that book,
Um,
really good.
uh, who's the author of that book?
Eckhart Tolle,
Okay. Gosh, why did I
if
even
that's what
that
you're
was
asking.
yeah, yeah. Great.
He talks
Awesome.
about the definition of an addiction, which is something that causes you harm, but you can't stop doing it. And then he says, "Tell me how thoughts aren't an addiction." Like they cause everybody harm, and when you want to stop it, you can't. You're just forced to do it. It's no different than a cigarette. And then okay, well, how do you break that cycle and use the mind as a tool rather than who you are? Because there's more to consciousness than just thought. But most of us, all we experience is the thought, so we don't experience it. Anyways, I recommend it to anybody who's stressed.
Yeah.
Go
Great.
read that one. That's life changing.
Excellent, man. Excellent. Where can people reach out to you, check in with if they want to just chat with you after this or even connect with you? I know you're a busy guy, but I know you want to give back. So if anyone wants to reach out to you or even maybe even learn more about your franchise, where can they find you?
Yeah, I have a website, just my first and last name, bennettmaxwell.com. It has links to all the social media. Yeah, if you reach out to me, it is busy, but it's also not in a sense of I still have probably 5 calls a week, like one a day with a random business owner that just says, "Hey, can I ask for advice?" And at first it was like, "No," because I don't have advice to give. And I'm like, maybe I have some advice to give. And
Maybe.
man, the countless people that gave me free advice and continue to give me free advice, I'm like, yeah, I owe a 30-minute call a day to somebody else. I mean, not.
Yeah.
So reach out to me. I am happy to help with anything if I can. Um, and then also on that website, there's links to Dirty Dough information there. And then my podcast as well, which is Deeper Than Dough. It's all about finding joy and fulfillment.
Oh man, love it. Love it. That's fantastic. Listen, Bennett, thank you for being on this show. I can't wait until this one airs. It's going to be a great one, and I know we're going to get a lot of traction on this show. So thanks for being here. I really appreciate you spending time. I think we could have gone probably another hour, hour and a half, but I know you got shit to get to. And but realistically, we'll have you back on, man. Again, down the road after you know some
Okay, well,
time
you're
here.
gonna get a text from me in a week because I already put the reminder on
All
my
right,
phone.
good. Hit me that text. We're
Throw it
gonna
up
we're
there.
gonna get together, and we'll have you back on the show. But appreciate you having you here on this show, and thanks for being here. And I am your host, Dave Sliman. Check us out at salesproformance.com. Like this show, everybody. Share it with somebody, please. Just hit that like button, hit that share button. We appreciate your support, and everybody out there who's a listener for our show. And we will see you next time. Thanks again.
The Sales Proformance Show.